Hello everybody and welcome to A Wild Camper's Diary. My name is Ben and the aim of this podcast is for me to offer you my thoughts on the world of wild camping, reflections and insight on my own experiences and hopefully some inspiration along the way. So, welcome to episode 10, which I have called When Enough is Enough. Now, you might be able to tell that this is an outside edition today. I'm out in East London, so welcome to East London and one of my local parks. The rain is falling this morning. It's a little bit drizzly. It's due to pick up a little bit later. It's very autumnal, so I'm just walking around through a lot of fallen leaves and wetness. There's groups of local runners, running clubs out getting their morning exercise. And over to my right, there's a bit of traffic, a few London buses, and a few people out just having a bit of a morning stroll. So, when enough is enough. If you follow my YouTube channel, Londoner Outdoors, you may have seen one of my recent videos a couple of weeks ago now, where I headed down to the south coast of England to a beach and I decided to camp on it. Now, I knew in advance that the weather wasn't going to be good, so I knew there was going to be rain, and I was prepared for that. I had everything ready. I knew it was going to be windy, and I was fairly prepared for that. And yeah, I went down there during the afternoon. It was a Saturday afternoon and did a bit of a recce, had a little bit of a look around. And it was lovely. I found a couple of perfect spots, and I, as I have been doing a lot of recently, saved the coordinates to the spot of question in my What 3 Words app, and I went on my way, the plan being to come back at around sunset because it was a fairly open area where people walked by and I wanted to wait till they'd all gone home. So I headed back to my car for a little bit, which was a good idea because the heavens opened and the rain was absolutely torrential. There was a huge weather system coming across the southeast. But according to the weather app, that was due to stop before I wanted to go back and pitch my tent. So that was all fine. The rain died away, the sun came out, and I had a clear hour or so just to get back to the beach, to where I'd been earlier during the day. I found my spot, no problem at all. It was a bit of a challenge setting the tent up, but I got the tent up. The issue was that the shingle and the sand was pretty loose from the rain earlier, so I had to be a little bit careful with how I put my pegs in, and I used quite a few sort of rocks and stones from the beach to weigh everything down. In hindsight, I did have the wrong pegs, and I probably should have brought different pegs for that terrain. But there you go, you make do with what you've got. So I settled down for the night and got all my bed set up and everything. It was really sort of atmospheric, shall we say. It was getting pretty windy, so we're at about sort of 6-7 o'clock at this point. I went out and checked all of the pegs and the guy out points, and things seemed fine. I was keeping an eye on the tide, the high tide times, and where I was on the beach. I was actually in the kind of sand dunes area where there is shrubbery and so on, which normally is not an area where the high tide would tend to come to. So, because I've camped in that way before, so I felt quite confident. I was in a safe spot. So anyway, I had my dinner. I was just kind of relaxing, and I did notice that the wind was picking up even more. Now, according to the app, there was due to be another heavy weather system coming in about sort of 8:30. And then it was going to get pretty bad around about 1 a.m. and the winds were forecast to be sort of 40 to 50 miles an hour. But as I was checking the app, the wind speeds, the forecasted wind speeds were increasing to at least 50 miles an hour. So I was there and I was thinking, this is pretty loud. I don't imagine I'm going to get much sleep. Those of you that have tried to sleep in a tent during a storm or a very windy night, it's unless you've got earplugs on you, it can be a little bit of a challenge. So I decided to, just sort of stick it out a little bit longer. Then I could hear the sea coming in. The high tide wasn't due until about 10:30 p.m. So it was around 8:30, 9 p.m. at this point, and I could hear the sea coming in, and it did feel quite close. Not right up to my tent, I should add, but it did feel quite close, and I could hear it, and I could see it really sort of swelling up and smashing into the wall of shingle that wasn't that far away from me. Now, I've camped on beaches before, and I've had to be aware of tide times, and I've been fine, but if I'm going to be honest with you, I always still get a little bit edgy. So I do wake up when it's high tide, and I do leave my tent, and I still check, even though I know I'm safe and I know the time. So I am a person that does feel a little bit edgy around high tides. So that kind of added to this situation, I think. So yeah, I went out to do a quick check of the tent, just to check everything was okay and in place, and it was, but the tent was really getting battered, and this was before the winds were due to get even stronger. And then I could see the sea smashing into that wall of shingle, and something just told me that this wasn't worth it, and enough was enough, and I just needed to pack up and go. So on the one hand, that can be a little bit disappointing, because you put all the preparation in and you want to kind of see the night through, see the adventure through to the end. But I think there does come a point where you just have to be sensible about it, and you just have to follow your gut instinct on these things. And I know that if I had stayed, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I just would have been, and I was starting to not enjoy it, actually, to be fair, and I just would have been there just thinking, is the tent going to hold? Are my incorrect pegs going to ping out, even though I've weighed them down with tons and tons of shingle? Is the tide going to come in higher than it is predicted, bearing in mind its stormy conditions? So all of those factors kind of just made me want to leave. It was literally an instant decision. I thought, right, no, I'm going. So I packed everything up. I could see the sea getting nearer. There was this little part of me thinking, am I going to pack up in time? Am I going to be still stuffing my sleeping bag into its bag and the sea's coming in onto the tent? So I was packing up really, really quickly, getting everything into. I wasn't being all neat about it. I was literally just stuffing everything into my rucksack. And yeah, got everything and got out of there. And I had actually planned in advance for this eventuality, so I made sure that my car wasn't too far away. So it was about a 30-minute walk away in the local town. So that was a good move, and I would recommend that if you're ever in that situation and you're not quite sure, and there is a chance you might have to abandon. So I think if there is an opportunity to have your getaway vehicle not far away, I think that is really worth doing, because who wants to be abandoning camp in a storm in the middle of nowhere and you have no way of getting out? So that's what I did. I left, and I was gutted. It was a good feeling. It was a really, really nice feeling, just having my head torch on full beam and my backpack back on my back and tent packed away and just heading back to the car. And I'm glad that I did. I had some accommodation provided for me last minute, but I had to drive about an hour and a half through some pretty grotty, stormy country lanes with flooding and fallen branches and so on. But it was the right move, and actually when I got to my accommodation for that night, the weather got really bad, and I was in a nice cosy lounge in someone's house, and I tell you, it was definitely the right move. It was the weather had got really, really bad, and I wouldn't have wanted to stay on that beach. So yeah, I've called this podcast when enough is enough, and I think sometimes with wild camping, or any kind of outdoor pursuits, you have to just be sensible about it. There's no point just being the hero. You know, I've got a family to think of, and you just need to be sensible about it. I was a bit disappointed, but you know, I'd rather be disappointed but safe. And you know, I think it's easy as a YouTuber to fall into a trap of I've got to see it through, I've got to get the video out, I've got to, you know, get all the dangerous footage or whatever. And I think you just have to just exercise a bit of common sense and just think, no, it's just not worth it, So I'm glad I did. And I if I was in that situation again, I probably would. I did still post the video of the experience. I'll put the link to the video if you've not seen it in the podcast notes for this episode. And yeah, check it out. So that brings us to the end of another episode of this podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Please do stay safe if you're out and about while camping or hiking. And I shall see you again for another episode of A Wild Camper's Diary.